Let's head back to 1960s California and follow the exploits of a serial killer. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all doing well out there. And today we're going to head back to 1960s California about a movie about a serial killer and obsession. But before we get into it, like, comment, and subscribe. Join me here. I would appreciate that. Also, I started a Discord. Head over to discord.com. Search Brian Rummel. If you don't have an account, it's free. Start one up. Search my name. I'll add you to my Discord. And we can talk movies all day, every day over there. There's a lot of great folks over there that just want to hang out and talk about movies. And there's nothing wrong with that. Today, we're going to talk about David Fincher's Zodiac. This film came out March 22nd of 2007. It's rated R. It's 2 hours and 37 minutes long. Had a budget of $65 million, and upon release, sadly, it only made 33 in America and 84 worldwide. This was actually a co-produced movie between Paramount Pictures and Warner Brothers. You can see their old school logos at the beginning of this film, which I thought that was awesome that David Fincher did that. David Fincher directed this film, and we have a great cast here. You watch this film, there's a ton of recognizable faces, but we're only going down a few of them. Jake Gyllenhaal plays Robert Graysmith. He was a cartoonist in real life for the San Francisco Chronicle, and he wrote 2 books about this, and I read both of them, and it made me obsessed with this case for a time in my life. Robert Downey Jr. plays Paul Avery. He is a reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle. Mark Ruffalo plays Inspector Dave Toschi, and Steve McQueen actually based his character in Bullet on the real Inspector Dave Toschi. Anthony Edwards, the great Anthony Edwards, plays Inspector Bill Armstrong. He is partners with Dave Toschi. Brian Cox plays Melvin Belli, and John Carroll Lynch plays Arthur Lee Allen in this film. This film basically follows the murders between 1968 and 1983 and takes us all the way up to 1991 about the Zodiac case. This is very much a police procedural. For sure, it follows some of the murders. That's basically how we start the beginning of this film. We follow the murders, and then we get into the police side of the investigation, although we're introduced to Robert Graysmith and Paul Avery. They are involved with some of this stuff, as we'll go through it. And then the last part's about Robert Graysmith's journey about investigating this case when everybody else has kind of moved off of it, and him writing his books. And then we get our conclusion, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Right at the beginning of the film, Fincher sets the mood, and we get he shows us the first murder. Now, this isn't the first Zodiac murder. Fincher only filmed the murders where there was a survivor, so he can get all the details he possibly could. And so there was somebody to tell him what happened, how things went down. He didn't show the other murders that were supposedly the Zodiac. Only the ones that they can prove were definitely the Zodiac. And we see Michael Mayhew and Darlene Ferrin in a car on 4th of July. And this car, Fincher does a great job setting the mood. It's a very creepy scene about just these 2 people sitting in the car talking on the 4th of July. This car pulls up behind them with the lights on. They think it's the cops, and he opens fire and kills Darlene, but Michael Mayhew survived. But he takes off shortly after this, and they can't find him. And matter of fact, we won't see him until the end of the film after this. And that pretty much kicks off the film. It's a very intense, well shot. After this, we see Fincher, to set up the title sequence, Fincher does this really cool, establishes San Francisco, and establishes the Zodiac letter going to the San Francisco Chronicle. We follow the letter while it's setting up the newsroom and everybody. We even see Paul Avery in one shot, or Robert Downey Jr., and Robert Graysmith going to work. And the Chronicle gets this letter, reads it, and that's when we're introduced to Dave Toschi and Bill Armstrong. And then right after we set up what's going on, we see our second murder, which is during the daytime. And Fincher does a great job of ratcheting. It's a very creepy and unsettling scene. It takes place at Lake Berryessa in California. And actually, for the production, Fincher and the production had trees flown in so they could recreate what Lake Berryessa looked like in 1969. Because it looked differently than it did when the murders happened. And when Zodiac walks up on them, it's a very creepy scene. And I love when directors are able to really pull out some really cool, really good suspense out of a daylight scene. Because most of the time we see scenes like this at nighttime or at dusk, when there's not a lot of light. Here it's in broad daylight. It's a beautiful day of just 2 people enjoying this little picnic they had by this lake. And it turns very ugly and very dark really quick. He ties them up and then continues to stab them repeatedly. But in this murder, once again, just like the first murder Fincher showed us, the guy lives and the girl dies. And then we see the third murder before the police investigation really gets going. And that's Paul Stine, a cabbie on Washington and Cherry Street in San Francisco. Matter of fact, when I got to visit San Francisco, I walked to that corner and that intersection just because I was obsessed with this movie and this case for a period of time in my life, and I had to just see the location. And again, it's a really well shot scene. Fincher ratchets up the tension right at the right moments, and then when the murder happens, it's kind of shocking. And then this is where we get into there's still letters going to the Chronicle, but this is where we get into the more of the investigation part of it, the police side of the investigation. Sure, we do bounce around with Robert Graysmith and Paul Avery because Paul Avery's investigating it for the Chronicle, and Robert Graysmith's just a kind of really taken in by this investigation, this serial killer that's basically terrorizing San Francisco, making threats against school children, and all these things that are going on. And we see the police part of the investigation was sprinkled in with these other characters. And then once we get to the third act, which this is a pretty long movie, but it never feels long, we get into Robert Graysmith's investigation while he's writing his book and trying to put all these facts together in one spot. And he gets some help from the police department in Vallejo, and even Dave Toschi helps him out a little bit. And basically, we don't really see... We have one more scene with the Zodiac where he takes this woman for a ride, but she escapes from him. It's a really creepy, well-done scene, again, by Fincher, who's a master at cinema. And he shows everything... He is a master, and he shows it here in this film. I think this movie is a masterpiece. I'm putting my hand early, because I absolutely love this film. And the movie wraps up in a very satisfying way, but the problem is, in real life, this real Zodiac was never caught. And even though this movie kind of points at one person, he was never arrested, and some would say that he wasn't the Zodiac because there was a DNA from a partial print or something off one of the letters, and it absconded this guy, which wouldn't be an Arthur Lee Allen, where the movie points to. But there's this final scene, actually two final scenes, where Robert Graysmith's character, just because he's so obsessed he has to know it's this guy. And he shows up where this guy works when they figure out it's Arthur Lee Allen. He walks in, Arthur Lee Allen turns around and asks him if he needs help. He works at this hardware store, at this paint counter. And Arthur Lee Allen's demeanor goes from smiling to being kind of jovial to like, what the fuck are you doing here? And the look on Robert Graysmith's face, he smiles, he just nods, and he walks out. He knows who the Zodiac was. So in terms of the movie, it was satisfying to see that character get the resolution that he wanted, the validation of this is who he thought it was. Then in the last scene, the absolutely last scene is they finally find Michael Mayhew. This is in 91. This is actually 7.5 years after Robert Graysmith went to that paint store and looked at Arthur Lee Allen and confirmed to him that that's who it was. And the new police sergeant or the new police captain in Vallejo finds him at this airport in Ontario, California, and shows him mugshots. And one of them's Arthur Lee Allen, and he points him out. And I got chills in the theater when I saw this. I still get chills to this day when this scene happens. He points to me, goes, "The last time I saw this face was on July 4th in 1969. And that's how the movie ends. And then you get some text at the end saying how the police had a meeting and they were going to go question Arthur Lee Allen after Michael Mayhew pointed him out in this little photo lineup, but he died of a heart attack before they can question him, and that he was never questioned about it after that. And that's how the movie ends, and it's spectacular. Now, there's also another scene. I got to mention this scene because it's one of my favorites. There's many scenes in this movie that I think are absolutely spectacular, but this scene actually sells it, and how good John Carroll Lynch plays Arthur Lee Allen in this film. There's a scene where Molinex from Vallejo goes with Toschi and Armstrong to Union Oil to see Arthur Lee Allen, to question him a little bit. And they're in this break room, and it's brightly lit, like most break rooms are at work. And he's very, he plays it very nervous and very nice at first. And then when they start questioning him a little further and they push him a little bit, the look he gives is like he goes from being a nice person to he wants to reach across the table and kill these men. Like his demeanor changes like that, and it's creepy, and you can feel it. It's palpable, and the way Fincher shoots it and the way John Carroll Lynch gives that performance, it's fucking awesome. It's a great scene. It really, really is. And they pull a lot of tension out of that scene. It's fantastic. Again, if you've never seen this film, I can't recommend this film enough. I love this film. It's a masterpiece of modern cinema. How this did not get nominated for an Oscar, although I know movies that are awesome don't need to win an Oscar to be a masterpiece. A lot of films never won an Oscar or even nominated for an Oscar were goddamn masterpieces. And this is one of them. Not only is it terrifically acted, the whole cast here is awesome. David Fincher directs the shit out of this film. It's expertly directed. He pulls tension out when you're supposed to. He really hones in on the obsession part of it when the investigation's going on. And you feel for these characters. You get to like these characters. You feel for them. They're so frustrated. The cops want to find out who this guy is because he keeps fucking with them. And when Graysmith loses his wife because of this obsession over investigating this, she leaves him because of it, because he's so obsessed that he's just dropping the ball at home. And you really feel it. And the time spent in this movie, it's 2 hours and 37 minutes long. The director's cut's a little longer, which is what me and Dale_A just watched a few weeks ago. This is his first time watching it. They lay it all out, and at the end of the day, yes, they point Arthur Lee Allen, and that's not guaranteed that's who it was, but it's such a well-told movie and such a well-done movie that I absolutely love this film. And honestly, at the end of the day, I would give Zodiac a 10 out of 10. This is one of my unicorn films. Like, there's a few films I consider perfect, like Back to the Future is one I consider perfect, Jaws I consider perfect, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and this is up there with that Mount Rushmore for me, is this film. This film is spectacular, and if you think you like this kind of film, check it out. I can't recommend it enough. Yes, 10 out of 10 for Zodiac. Have you ever seen this film? Leave a comment down below. Let me know. Hit the thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. Share this video. I would appreciate that. I'll be back soon with some more reviews, but until then, bye.